Tash Talks is brought to you by Recharge, simplifying growth for consumer brands. Hello and welcome to Tash Talks, the show where we celebrate the journeys of some of the most inspirational women in the UK today. Now, it's said that the average life cycle of a brand is around 10 years. I'm joined today by a fabulous jewellery designer and entrepreneur whose brand is about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. I'm so excited to sit down with Dinny Hall. Welcome, Dinny. I'm so happy to have you on Tash Talks today. I know we're going to have such an interesting conversation, but where I'd like to start is, who were you as a little girl and who are you today?
As a little girl, I was a bit of a fantasist, really, and I used to do.
Nobody's ever said that before.
Have they not?
No.
Have they not? I kind of made my own little magical world, and you could find me with a sketchbook and literally drawing all the time from about the age of 4.
Really?
Yeah, and I used to do little picture books and hand sew them and tell stories about donkeys or horses, and then gradually, as I grew a little bit older, I started doing cartoons, and I was very aware of what was going on, and I'd do cartoons of people, and then I started designing insides of imaginary people's houses, but no actual jewellery at that time. But I was,
but a real creative flair.
Yeah, it was just there.
Yeah.
And I loved to do it.
And who are you today? You're still the same. You're the same person.
Yeah, I walk around with taking pictures everywhere, looking up, looking at turrets, door handles. It's kind of watching people, what they wear, and then whip out my sketchbook and still drawing. And I think that will continue until I can't pick up a pencil.
Oh, how wonderful. So you've had the most amazing 40-year career, which we're going to be discussing today. But tell me about your very first launch out of college, because you launched your graduate collection with Liberty, didn't you?
Yes, we had I had to ask, because I did so much jewellery, and I studied at Central St Martin's, and that's really quite a traditional course in many ways. You're taught how to design jewellery, but also how to make jewellery. But I wanted to do things for the stage or for fashion, and so I had to beg them for 2 showcases rather than 1, and I absolutely filled them with these collections of jewellery that really was probably more suitable for the catwalk. And the buyer from Liberty came along to see what Central Martin students were doing that year, and she was like, wow, this is amazing, would you design a collection from this for Liberty? And so I did.
And what did you think? Was that an unusual thing to happen at that age?
I felt somewhat out of sorts, because I always thought I was a square peg in a round hole at Central, because there were all these people doing exactly what they were told, and I was a bit of a rebel. So I was really surprised, because I always felt like I was a black sheep. So to have that kind of validation suddenly like that, it was kind of like being showered with this wonderful kind of condonement of what I'd been up to. And the principal of the college came up to, my mum and dad were there, and I was talking, and he was saying, I suppose I have to say that your daughter may well do very well in life.
Well,
I'll never forget that.
And it turned out to be a prophecy. But the early stuff you were designing was very different to what you came to be known for, wasn't it? So tell us about that transition from fashion and catwalk pieces that would be better on the catwalk to the collections you've now become really well known for.
Well, I think it's because I am a designer, and I needed to go through experimental phases. I wanted to experiment with materials. I wanted to push the boundaries a bit. I certainly didn't want to be a staid old boring jewellery designer, which perhaps I am now, I don't know. But back then I wanted to do big things. I wanted to make a statement, but also, yes, I loved fashion. So I gravitated towards the fashion designers of the time, and I designed the jewellery for Rifat Ozbek, who was very, very famous in the 1980s. Bruce Oldfield, who was also very famous. He used to design clothes for Joan Collins and very glamorous people at the time, and I did their shows. And I suppose I was evolving, and you don't necessarily, it's like being a chef. you don't necessarily just make your iconic recipes first of all. You do all your experimentation.
I love what you just said then about the experimental phases, and as a designer, and that's probably true for all creatives, isn't it? That
I think it is, yes.
But I've never heard it articulated in that way before. How many of these phases do you feel you've been through over the period of, say, 40 years?
I think it's countless, and interestingly enough, I'm going through another one now.
Right.
But I do think that if you're a creative person and you see things differently.
Yeah.
I think you're not neurotypical. I'm not neurotypical. Everything is about interpreting what I see.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that, like a musician, you want to create to make the world a better place in some sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For yourself, but then for others.
Yeah.
And whether I do or whether I don't, but I think you can create a little bit of happiness from what you make, and people want to buy it.
I do agree with that. Absolutely, 100%. So there were a few things that put your business really on the map. I mean, obviously, you were always on the map, Dinny. You were designing for big fashion shows.
I haven't always felt on the map, I must say. Sometimes I've rolled right off it, but there we are.
Well, we probably all feel like that. But you were designing for big fashion shows straight out of college and being designers. So you were pretty much on the map. But I suppose from the point of view of consumers and the public at large, there were a few things, a couple of movies and the location Notting Hill. Can we just talk about those? The impact of 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Bridget Jones, and then just having your flagship shop in Notting Hill and being a part of that community for 50 years.
Well, first, before I've had opened the store in Notting Hill in 1992, I had a studio in Beak Street, Soho. And that was another area of London where there were many creative film studios. And we were right next to a film production company.
Yeah.
And I used to wave to them across these sort of turrets where my studio was. And, there was a fashion costume director for Weddings, a Funeral was in there.
Oh, right.
So sometimes you're right place, right time.
Yeah.
And she'd come up and she'd say, "What are you doing?" And we'd have these kind of party sales up there. And so it was kind of fostering the connections at the time. And she said, "Oh, I want to use all your jewellery for 4 Weddings on a Funeral, a movie I'm doing with Kristen Scott Thomas and Hugh Grant." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, right." So that was even before I opened the store. But then by the time because it was years before, and then they filmed. And so I think they were filming in 91. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
And then I made the move to Notting Hill. And then 4 Weddings and a Funeral came out. So that was probably one of the first incidences where there was a lot of attention on it, and we already had the shop by the time the film came out.
And what happened with Bridget Jones?
Well, once we were in Notting Hill, Helen Fielding was a young journalist in the area, and she was kind of writing this diary about single woman diary, and it's like living that life, and which was never quite glamorous enough, she felt, which we all know that one, don't we?
That's how we all feel.
We all think, we want to be really glamorous. But I don't feel glamorous enough, And so she wrote her first book, and then Bridget comes into the shop and buys jewellery, and she makes a mention of the brand in the book, which was really lovely. And that kind of and then the Notting Hill movie, all those, the Bridget Jones, Notting Hill, and 4 Weddings and a Funeral was very much sort of satelliting around my brand in that store, and it really helped to bring people in and say, "Oh, this is a Notting Hill brand, and it's creative, and we're in the right place."
And what is it about Notting Hill that gave a brand like yours opportunities? Well, because it's not just the movies, it's the actual culture of Notting Hill as well, isn't it? And what the place is that brought opportunity to you.
Well, I think it goes right back to the 60s, because there was a film director called Nicholas Roeg, and he directed Performance, which was a movie with Mick Jagger in it and Anita Pallenberg. And it's one of those cult movies that if you see it, it's just absolutely incredible, so ahead of its time, about a criminal hanging out in Notting Hill who ends up with a rock star, and the rock star's Mick Jagger. And that's all filmed in All Saints Road. And so it had already had this sort of cutting edge rock music, but also the reggae and the West Indian scene there, which was vibrant and colourful, and the carnival, and it was an area where cultures mixed really well. And then all the celebrities started coming in, making it very much a place where paparazzis hung out. And it just seemed fun, and it was.
Over 40 years, you know, most brands can't survive 40 years. They come and they go, and I don't know what the average lifespan of a brand is, but how
10 years, I think.
You think it's 10 years?
I think it's you have,
because most brands, you see them go on a trajectory, right? They come in and then they do well, they then go up, and then they start sort of falling off, and they're just become less relevant and gradually start fading. How have you kept a brand as alive as yours is for 4 decades? That's 4 times the average life cycle. What have you done? What's the secret?
I think one word is resilience.
Right.
And it's, I tend to think of every knockback being an opportunity to see a way forward. And that doesn't mean to say that I haven't been in very dark places when fear of completely failing and almost completely failing. There's been times when I've ended up in the High Court trying to save my brand.
Was that one of the toughest experiences you've had in terms of going to the High Court?
Yes, it was because I had sold half the business to somebody, and then that partnership had turned sour.
I see. Okay.
And you learn these things that are all about business, and as a creative person, you kind of tend to want to be a little bit blinkered with like, oh no, like that. But then you find yourself in situations where you're fighting for your brand name, perhaps, and that's what that was all about. And I did win in the end, but that took 7 years of battling through the courts.
And how did you recover emotionally from that period? Because, I mean, all entrepreneurs know there's ups, there's downs, there's highs and the lows. You've talked about resilience. What are some of the things you advise people on resilience? How did you find the resilience within yourself?
I'm not a Buddhist, but I do like to look at things in a kind of Buddhist way. In learning how to, if you can sort of clear your mind of we call it monkey chatter, which is this stuff that goes on and on and on, around and round and round. And
the stuff that's saying you're not good enough, that's going to fail, who do you think you are, that.
Yes. Yeah. So it's about resilience, focus, and trying to eradicate fear, because it's always fear that really trips you up. And there's always going to be threats from all sorts of different angles. And boy, oh boy, are there threats now, from outside sources that you have no control of at all. So but it's how you process these things and keep them at bay, and then work out how you can dodge. I'm not a soothsayer, but it's about trying to keep in that straight line, but working out when you have to veer off it a bit, to stop, reconsider, and try and remain confident.
And over 40 years as a woman in business, I mean, the landscape's changed a lot for women. You can no doubt tell me more about how it's changed. But, now female entrepreneurship, there's a real story and narrative around it, and this show's part of that. How have you seen things change? And I also want to ask you, do you actually see yourself as a businesswoman? Because the whole time we've been talking, you've very much talked as a creative, right? You're talking about sketching and looking up. How do you see yourself, and how's the landscape changed for women in business?
I think it was very, very different when I started. People didn't even think that I can't think of other women that were on their own in business. Mostly the women that I looked to they had a male partner who was running the financial side. And it does sound a bit sexist that I'm saying that, but it is true. And certainly from the point of view of my father, he was a financial advisor, and he thought I was nuts. He was terrified with what I was doing, and he kept on saying, and I was like, no.
What was he terrified of? Things like you opening the shop?
Everything I did, he was terrified of.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's because you can be quite a force if you have a very strong creative drive. But if you don't dot your T's and pay your taxes and learn about PAYE and all those things, when you start employing people, you sort of wallpaper over the cracks. Creative people tend to do that in order to be able to remain creative. And I did all that. So I landed myself in deep water periodically along the way. But
I love that, Dinny. What's sort of things were you doing? No, no. What were you doing? I love the way you say landed deep water. What happened?
I regularly had the bailiffs banging on the door.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
saying you've got to pay your tax and stuff like that. There's one thing I know, you have to pay.
Right.
So you can't actually dodge it, but it's how long can you dodge it?
Yeah. Okay, I love that.
But I'm not talking about paying to staff.
Yeah.
I'm talking about these things that are very difficult to understand for creative people.
Yeah, yeah.
Like VAT, and working out how much something should cost and your margins and all of that was a very slow and painful process that I had to learn. And then obviously gradually got people in to help in that way. And so in answer to your question though, no, I'm a creative person that had to learn business, and there are certain business skills that I have. It's more entrepreneurship than it is financial acumen.
Yeah, so more spotting opportunity and pushing towards them.
And working out how to, yeah.
And how have you seen the world change for women from then to now? Women who want to start businesses, things must be quite different.
Probably it's quite hard, given my attitude as well, to take me seriously. So if you didn't understand what I was doing creatively, there were no business people that really took me seriously in the early part. But I did have some incredible people who did spot that. One was this amazing chap who used to deal in antique jewellery in Chelsea, and he loaned me money and said, just pay me back when you can. And I had people along the way that did see that there was something.
Yeah.
And they'd come in and they'd say, I'm not becoming a partner because I daren't. But I am going to lend you this money because what you're doing is great.
Wow.
And a lot of those people were already in the business, so they could see what it was I was doing. And there was a chap, one chap called Gordon Watson, and he still does TV sometimes, trying to sell very expensive antiques to aristocrats and things like that.
Okay.
And there was another chap called Robert Forrest who was very much part of the international fashion map, who lived in New York, and he championed British designers, and he was absolutely key in getting my name out there, and just did that for no money. So you meet people.
So you find these
enough
people,
to meet certain
but
people
you're doing this
along the way.
now because you're also mentoring young people, aren't you?
But I now have another person who I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for him.
Who's that?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name, and I don't know if he'd really want me to. All I can say is that his mentoring of me allows me to be here now.
Wow, how wonderful. And tell us about the mentoring you're doing of young people to help them launch their jewellery collections.
It's an industry that I love, and I think that one of the things that I definitely learned along the way is I love using my hands, I love the tools, I love the jewellery business, the gemstone buying, the making sure you're working with the right people, and this comes from that country, or sapphires from Madagascar, and what mine do they come from? It's a massive and amazing industry, and you meet some amazing people from all over the world, and you do travel a lot, which is an amazing opportunity. And so all of that, when you draw it all together, it is an incredible industry, and it's all based on trust, really, at the end of the day. So the fact that you can build up this body of people and these sort of networks across the world, so that you get the right stones and you're buying the right metal, and you're not being deceived. Because there are a lot of charlatans out there. Too many. Threats that come at you all the time. But underneath it all, it's a really great industry. And so I want to save it. I want to make sure that it's not eroded, and that young designers, at least some, can have the opportunity to walk the walk that I did, and walk in my shoes maybe in another 20, 30 years. I've set up this award, the Young Jewellery Designer of the Year Award, at the Islington Business Design Centre, where we champion. I offer the award to the particular designer, and then this is the first year that we're showing a capsule collection and producing it for.
And they're going to
the
launch.
chap that won last year, Sam Holmes.
And it's going to launch in your store, which
And
is
it's going to launch in October. Yeah, but he's an incredible. He's got a real story to tell. So I think we're looking for really special people that can fire the imagination into the future. That's really encouraging for the industry that you can still find these amazing people. In the past, what I would do would draw in a sketchbook, and then so your ideas become real just by sketching, and then I would have drawn it onto graph paper and done a technical drawing where you see this three-dimensional view, and then you take it to a craftsperson. That would be carved out of wax, sometimes directly in metal, and then you make your masters, and then you start building the jewelry. You know, if it's a setting, you start building the setting, you use soldering tools and all the same tools that a jewelry craftsman would have used for centuries. But then gradually you're able to now use 3D printing and CAD drawing, which is being able to make those three-dimensional items through your CAD files. So if I was to draw that same link, say that I'd drawn 25 years ago, I can now give a quick sketch and then sit and work with a CAD drawer. They have to be very technically proficient. And you can work out a total three-dimensional render of your item. I'm not saying it's easy, but then it's on the computer and then you can send it off to be 3D printed. It's just like push a button, out it comes the other end as an object, three-dimensional.
Wow.
And then you've got a master. It allows you to send things across the world, and so long as you've got people, technicians that you can, and craftspeople that you can trust, and you know they're going to understand the shape that you're working with.
Let's have a little trip down memory lane. So you've kindly brought in some photos to share with us, all of which illustrate a part of your journey. Let's start with this fantastic photo of Lily Allen. What's happening here?
She's actually the daughter of a film producer, one of the film producers that I would have met back in the day in Beak Street. So I watched her grow up and become Lily Allen. So she just used to come to me in the early stages of her career to get jewellery made and say, can I have a ring, can I have that? And so there's just a lovely picture. We got several but that's a lovely picture of her wearing some diamond hoops that we made for her. She went for fine jewellery from us though. It's really interesting because, you know, she's very fashion led.
I mean, you've always had celebrities wearing the brand, which has always kept you front of mind, hasn't it, in terms of the consumer, though, because there's always people like Lily Allen, really famous people who love and speak about your jewellery, isn't there?
Yes, it's sort of from the beginning we've had some amazing people buying the jewellery, from Madonna to Margot Robbie, to FK Twigs. So, you know, you get some you think, gosh, she's 40, the brand's 40 years old. What's FK Twigs buying things from Dinny Hall from? But she loves jewellery, and if she sees a hoop she likes, she's come in numerous times and bought from us. And we have quite a lot of wonderful stories of people that buy their engagement rings from us, and you know, there's some beautiful stories that we have to tell.
Well, that brings us neatly onto rings, which aren't engagement rings, but this picture here.
Cocktail rings. Yes.
So that brings us neatly onto rings, not engagement rings, cocktail rings.
Yes.
This is part of your collection. Tell us about it.
It's something that I suppose I didn't want to let go, that sort of statement feeling of fashion. And when bit by bit, once you've got a retail store, you really are making for your customer. You learn who the customer is and you start making for them. It's for you and your peers at first. And then it's like, who's coming in? Okay, you're responding to what they want. And everything got smaller and smaller. I always wanted really ultimately the jewellery to be affordable. So, you know, the weight of the jewellery mattered. And so you'd come in and you'd buy these little hoops and these little pearls on hooks with little curls. And that was great. And it was good design, but it was becoming much more commercial, but it was still very much had my own stamp on it. But I started to think I always want some bigness. So we thought, I'm always going to do a cocktail ring. And the image that you see there was some rings that were designed 25 years ago. And we used these massive emerald cut rings and set them in a really special way. And it's like an upturned table, Alvar Aalto table, with and I looked at the legs and I thought, oh, let's turn that table upside down. And I thought, oh, that will do it. And I designed that big chunky setting. Yeah.
Amazing.
So even the setting comes from somewhere.
Something you've seen.
Yes.
Something you've seen.
Yeah. So they're a very iconic piece of design. We don't make them anymore, but they mean a lot to me.
Our next photo is the King of Bling. The time Prince William bought Kate Middleton.
I just threw that in because it was hilarious. It was just such, I think it was in the Mirror.
Yeah.
Or something. Maybe it was in the Sun. I don't really remember. I think one of my sales girls sold the story as well, which was really, I was really cross because I like to be discreet. But then when I saw that, it was so funny. So Prince William went into Selfridges actually, and we had a concession in there. And someone had said to him, go to Dinny Hall, and he bought these earrings that I had designed around a mogul diamond, which I'd seen in the Louvre. And I thought, you know, they're massive. And I thought, you know, that would cost $1 million to have a diamond that big. So I had these mogul cuts made in cubic zirconia. And then I designed a range around them. So the earrings you see in that are my fake diamonds, fake mogul diamonds. And Prince William bought them for Kate when he was courting her.
Well, it's a massive endorsement for your brand, isn't it?
Yeah.
A huge endorsement for your
brand.
brand.
I just love that King of Bling.
And then there's a beautiful photo of you on the cover of Red magazine. When was this?
That was when I was living in Queen's Park. So obviously I had been living in Notting Hill, and then I moved, like many people, to Queen's Park.
Yes, everyone has to move to Queen's Park, can't they?
It got too expensive in Notting Hill. Yeah. It's just a really nice moment because I think that having a child, I got married. You can see in one of the pictures, a little picture of me at my wedding with my sister leaning over about to kiss me. It was a really nice time, but by the time that picture was taken, the marriage was over.
Oh, was it?
Yes. It's a very poignant moment because it was like, okay, I'm a single mother.
And you had a very young child at this point. You said your child was about 3 at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And how am I going to do this? So was
it quite a frightening time for you?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was. I put that picture in because, you know, I'm still under 40, and I'm thinking about how am I going to do this, and how am I going to bring Lorcan up? It's that age-old thing. How am I going to be a good mother and run this business? And I'm not quite sure how I did it, but I was always at the school gates to pick him up.
Oh, that's so lovely. And you know what? I think so many mums feel the same way, particularly with a breakup. You then think, how am I going to do this? And somehow, you're not sure how, but you do manage to do it.
It's largely, I have to say, the support of other women as well.
Yeah.
And often married women who are married who'll say, I'll help you and I'll pick him up. You know, it's like, oh my God, I've got a meeting, I'll pick him up.
Yeah.
And so it's relationships you forge at the school often are the things that help and you forward.
I think you're so right. I know there was a time when I was working really hard when my kids were in primary school, and there was a mum who clocked the fact that I was always missing things like deadlines for whatever, tickets, whatever. And she used to separately message me and say, have you seen? And I used to think, God, I'm so grateful for you. Yeah, I don't really know you, but I'm so grateful that you've clocked that I am dropping these balls, because I am dropping them. So there's no point hiding from that. And she really helped me out.
And I've made lifelong friends from some of those school gates mums.
Now, before we wrap up, you've got something very special to show us, haven't you?
Oh yes, it's in
your pocket. What have you got in your pocket?
I've got a bracelet, which is I just thought I'd bring it along because this is 25 years old now. And I think that what I'm proud about this is we don't sell it anymore, but what I'm proud about it is that it could be now.
Yeah.
And so I think I wanted to relook at it and just show, you know, each little casting is made different sizes, and, you know, we design it so it doesn't swivel. It's a really, really good piece of craftsmanship, even if I say so myself. And this is, I think, the most special bracelet that I've ever made. So it means a lot to me. And that's why I brought it along.
Well, it is actually beautiful. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, why don't you remake it as it is and put it back in the box?
It's from a collection called Toro.
Yeah.
And we have reinvented another collection called Toro.
Yeah.
And it's all based on the bull's horn. So that's part of a bull's horn.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you can see that. Half a bull's horn. And this is a bull's horn curved around and joined back up again. But it's also got that feeling of, you know, when they put bits through horses or bulls' mouths.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's the tackle that the kind of equestrian tackle, but
that's
the
another
bullfight,
illustration of how something
Spanish,
you saw
yeah,
inspired that.
Exactly. So it's not just one thing; it's all things.
Yeah, yeah.
And how much inspiration can you get from a bull's horn? Well, endless.
Well, it seems like you can, because look at that, a piece of absolutely timeless jewellery.
Yeah.
So this year's the 40th anniversary of Dinny Hall. In September, you've got celebrations coming up, haven't you? What's happening for the 40th anniversary?
Well, one of the most important things for me is we're celebrating Sam on mentoring our designer, who's going to come and actually make jewellery in the store. And he's designed a workbench that you put on your back so as to show how the jewellery is made. I just want to celebrate it in a way that champions what we do as a whole. And hopefully we'll have a party. We don't know where yet. We've got collections coming out which are celebrating, call it Icons Reborn. And it's really pulling together all the storytelling and giving the brand a narrative as to how we got to where we are. But I think most important for me is the looking forward. So it's about how reinventing for the next 20, 30 years when maybe I'm not in the brand anymore. How can you make a brand exist beyond the person, which is the challenge that I'm working on now, but with an open heart. So I'm not trying to get rid of myself. I am collecting and curating what's been done to date, which has made the brand what it is, and just gradually separating myself from that so that it can continue with others. And that's why it's very marked that we've got a young designer coming in. Do you see what I mean? Because and inviting young designers to go forward and design for the brand going forward with the same kind of principles behind it. But
fantastic. I mean, it's such an achievement. Just as we wrap up, what is your piece of advice for women thinking, how are they going to build something over a 40-year period? How will they keep going through setbacks? What's your advice for women watching this programme?
One is be sure of your talent. Because if you're not, I don't know whether you'll get through the dark periods. And I think you have to, whatever, if you believe in yourself, you have to carry on believing in yourself. It's a mantra that you need to keep telling yourself, because there's no way you can do anything in life without the knockbacks. And that's the thing that will keep you going if you have real belief in yourself. But be honest about that. If you've got your back against the wall, sometimes you have to say, am I good or am I not? And the other thing which is incredibly important is you can't do it on your own. So it's choosing partnerships and the right people to work with, but also to understand that just like a marriage or a great friendship, the partners that you have in business are as equally as essential. So if someone comes along and does invest in you, like this has happened to me, even in this late stage, we had the person who I'm working with now invested actually 14 years ago, isn't still within the brand, backing it, moving it forward, and has actually become the CEO now, which is such a treat, because that enables me to be able to do some of the things that I've been saying to move it forward into the future. And that's about making sure that you nurture those relationships, understand each other, because you can't do any of this unless you understand the people that you're working with and forge trust between each other. That's my big tip.
Amazing. Dinny, thank you so much for joining me today. Honestly, I could have carried on talking for ages, but thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Tash Talks is brought to you by Recharge, simplifying growth for consumer brands.